I'm delighted to give the floor to Ivana Hughes, who is listed in the program as the president of Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, but has at least two other hats that I need to mention. One is that she's a professor of chemistry at Columbia University. The second is that she's a member of the advisory group to the TPNW. So it's an interesting mix that I would like to stress, because nuclear weapons is one of those fields in which you just cannot have only the politicians speaking. You really need to have some expertise. And I think that it's important to recognize that after Reagan Gorbachev, there was a lot of scientists, and before Reagan Gorbachev, there was a lot of work done by scientists. So, Lara, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you for that lovely introduction and for inviting me to be part of this impressive and inspiring conference and this wonderful panel. Thank you again for having me. I'm especially delighted that the meeting is taking place in Paris, because I absolutely love being in Paris. This is actually my fourth trip here. And I think I have gathered from 4 trips that it's, for me, impossible to be unhappy in Paris. I'm always happy in Paris. And I was recalling the very first trip that my husband Emily, who was here in the audience, and I did with our 3 children about 11 years ago. And at the time, they were 12, 8, and 2. So our youngest, Nemanja, had, before the trip, had walked around New York City, where we live, talking about how he was going to see the Eiffel Tower and the Mona Lisa. And this was just the refrain that he kept repeating. And then we got to Paris, and the day that we visited the Eiffel Tower, he was actually fast asleep in his stroller. And we ended up with lots of photos of him sleeping in the stroller, but he never got to see the Eiffel Tower. And then the day that we went to the Louvre, we made sure he was awake, but then the room was so full that he actually didn't get to see the Mona Lisa either. So as far as I'm concerned, Paris has to stay the way it is, because my son has to see the Eiffel Tower and the Mona Lisa. So I visited another remarkable city earlier this year, just 2 months ago, the city of Nagasaki. And contrary to Paris, the overwhelming feeling I had while I was in Nagasaki, and my voice is literally shaking as I shared this, was one of sadness, one of loss, one of disbelief that what had happened in Nagasaki, in fact, did happen there. And there was one exception. I was there for a few days. I spoke at the conference. I was at the museum. I went to the hypocenter. I did sort of all the kinds of things that people talk about. It was such a deeply moving and meaningful experience. The one exception was interacting with the hibakusha, which gave me a sense of joy, quite simply because they were radiating joy. And I'll tell you what I mean by they were radiating joy. It was Mr. Turkana and Ms. Miramuta, and both of them, quite simply, it was so clear that they wanted to be nowhere else and doing nothing else but spreading their message of love and peace and nuclear abolition. And that was just so deeply inspiring too. So let me change gears a little bit. So we are here at this conference to imagine peace. We're here at this panel to imagine a world free of nuclear weapons. But I'm going to put these 2 cities, Paris and Nagasaki, together for just a few minutes and try to give you a sense. I'm going to want you to imagine actually something not good, and that is Paris getting hit by a nuclear weapon. And our imagining will start with a nuclear bomb hitting right here, right where we are. And what I'm going to do is describe, and this is based on scientific simulations. There's a website actually called Nuke Map by someone in the United States, Alex Wallerstein. And you can go on that website and choose the size of a weapon and choose the location, and then figure out what would happen in a particular scenario that you define. So our scenario is going to be a nuclear weapon hitting right here. And the nuclear weapon I've chosen an energy yield of this weapon to be 1 megaton. That's about 50 times larger energy yield than the energy yield of the Nagasaki bomb. And it's the kind of yield US and China both have weapons in their current arsenals that are greater than this. Russia for sure has something just a little bit smaller, possibly other bigger weapons as well. And so we're going to go through what are essentially 6 concentric circles. So remember the Eiffel Tower and the Mona Lisa. I'll tell you what happens to them. And we're going to talk. I'm going to talk about what would happen in each of those 6 concentric circles. So I do have some notes because this I do need to know give you all the numbers correctly. So the first circle has a radius of 1.4 kilometers. That's a little less than a mile for those who use the English system. And that's the fireball. And this is essentially, the temperature of this is hotter than the sun. Everything inside this radius is evaporated, and that includes this college. It includes the Notre Dame. We heard how excited the French officials were that the Notre Dame has reopened. It is evaporated in this scenario. It includes the Pantheon and so on. So about, you go out in all directions and everything is evaporated. You then go out to a radius of about 2.2 kilometers. That's about 1.4 miles. And what you have is 100% fatalities. You have complete destruction of infrastructure. This basically begins to look like Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6th and August 9th of 1945. This includes the Louvre. The Mona Lisa's gone. My son can't see it. It includes Musée d'Orsay. It includes Montparnasse. And then we go to the third concentric circle. This is 2.5 kilometers out, and this is what's known as the radiation radius. And this is where the radiation dose would be basically fatal. Maybe if you're in the basement of a building or something along those lines and you survive the destruction. But that's, according to my estimate, that's basically everyone in the 5th, 6th, 3rd, 13th, and 14th district. Everybody has received this fatal radiation dose and will die within hours, days, or possibly weeks. And then if we go out much farther now, moderate blast damage radius of 4.6 kilometers. This is where most buildings collapse. Injuries are universal. There are fires spreading because not everything is destroyed, not everything is evaporated or collapsed. So the fires are spreading from here, and this includes the Eiffel Tower. My guess is it's gone. My guess is it's destroyed. And then we go to another 5th concentric circle, so named 4 so far. There are only 2 more, and this one is again much larger. This is a radius of 10.7 kilometers. This is essentially an area of about 300 kilometers squared. And this is where everybody, the temperature is so high that everybody has received 3rd-degree burns. And in fact, they actually don't feel the pain because all the nerves are gone. And so this is many of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki survivors had these lifelong conditions of essentially their parts of their skin fusing from these incredibly devastating thermal radiation, 3rd-degree burns. And this basically, anyone shopping on Champs-Élysées, almost all the way to the Arc de Triomphe from where we are. And then we have one more, last concentric circle goes out to about 12 kilometers. It's the light damage radius. That's where you have broken windows. The Palais Congress that we were in last night is the windows are broken, and this is an area of about 450 kilometers square. So what I have described, when all is said and done with these 6 concentric circles, we're looking at immediate deaths of about 1.2 million people. We're looking at about 1.6 million injured. And then based on what we know from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, within 6 months, probably another million or more dying from impacts of radiation. And this, what I have described, is the impact of just one nuclear weapon. You already heard from Andrea that we have 12,500 of them, more than 12,500 of them. And so it's not going to be just, the expectation is that it's not just one weapon use. The expectation is that it quickly turns into a nuclear war. A recent book by author Annie Jacobson describes this nuclear war taking place over 72 minutes. So this is not hours or days or weeks or months. This is immediate. And then the long-term impacts begin in the case of a nuclear war between U.S. and Russia, where each country uses just about 1/3 of their current arsenals. We have what's referred to as nuclear winter, which means that temperatures drop because all the fires of the cities that have been attacked create soot that goes up into the atmosphere, blocks incoming sunlight, and temperatures drop by about 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. And one of the most dramatic impacts of this would be on food production. Agriculture quite simply fails, and within 2 years, the estimate is that more than 5 billion people die of starvation. So what is this? So let me just close with making you very depressed, clearly, but let me close with the solution. And that solution you've heard, I believe basically all the speakers today have mentioned the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. These weapons have to go. John F. Kennedy said in 1961, we must abolish nuclear weapons before they abolish us. That is still very much true more than 60 years later. I want to imagine that by 2045, which would be the 100th anniversary of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the 100th anniversary of the end of World War II, and the 100th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons will have succeeded in eliminating all nuclear weapons from the face of the planet. I think we need, when it comes to the nuclear weapon states, we need pressure from inside those states, at least in those countries where we can exert that pressure, and we need pressure from the international community, which the treaty is already doing. We need that membership of the treaty to continue to grow. And for me, I look sort of optimistically at the historical case of the 1980s, where there was huge success in reversing the nuclear arms race. I think we can do that again, and I just highlight 3 features of that movement were good leadership. Presidents Reagan and Secretary General Gorbachev did recognize the nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. We also had engaged citizenry. That is something that we desperately need now. And in the 80s, as now, right here, there was this deep involvement and commitment from religious communities. And we heard from Reverend Yamamoto about this. This is absolutely critical. This is a key piece. And I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.